everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Medill State of Local News podcast, where we discuss the business of local news with the nation's top news executives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. I'm your host, Tim Franklin, the John M. Mutz Chair in Local News at the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University, home of the Local News Initiative. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our very special guest today, PJ Browning, the CEO of Evening Post Publishing and president and publisher of the Post and Courier in Charleston, South Carolina. PJ, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I've really been looking forward to this conversation because I know that our audience is going to be as inspired as I am by the story of your entrepreneurship and success in Charleston. And I think many of your ideas may be replicable in other parts of the country. So I'm hoping people walk away with some ideas. I think they will. Before we get to the questions, PJ, I'd like to briefly introduce you to the audience. Let me say up front that I consider PJ to be one of the top news executives in America, but don't just take my word for it. PJ's been named both the International Media Executive of the Year by the Inter-American Press Association and the National Publisher of the Year by Editor and Publisher. PJ, I imagine it's a pretty short list of folks who've won both those honors, so congratulations. Before taking the helm of the Post and Courier in 2013, PJ was the publisher of several newspapers, including those in Myrtle Beach, Macon State College, and Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Under her leadership, the Post and Courier won its first Pulitzer Prize in nearly a century in 2015. It's been a Pulitzer finalist multiple times since. In addition to producing prize-winning journalism, the Post and Courier, under her direction, is one of the most innovative local news organizations in the nation. It's the only two-time designee as a Medill Local News Bright Spot in our annual State of Local News report. And at a time when many in the industry are retrenching, PJ's Post and Courier, which is the oldest newspaper in the South, dating back to 1803, is actually expanding. It now has 9 newsrooms across the Palmetto State. The for-profit, family-owned Post and Courier has raised 7-figure philanthropic dollars to support its journalism. It's hiring more staff. It's launched a membership program. It's doing community events. And it's such an industry standout that the Post and Courier was featured on the CBS Sunday morning show just a couple of years ago. So, PJ, first, I just want to say, wow. Second, one of the things I admire about you also is your leadership style. So bear with me just a second here. When I was thinking about how to describe your style to our audience, I was thinking about a certain college football coach. I graduated from Indiana University, which 2 years ago hired a relatively unknown mid-major coach, Curt Cignetti. In just his second year, his team wins the national championship and goes undefeated. Cignetti is not some flashy, self-promoting, performative leader. He's intensely focused on the fundamentals, on execution, and on game strategy. In other words, he just gets results. So PJ, what I'm saying is, I think of you as the Curt Cignetti of local news.
Yeah.
You just get results. So how would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, wow. I can tell I like that guy already. No, I do think it's about, so we have a lot of ideas, but ultimately, if you said, what's that one word, it is execution. Now, we also have a lot of strategy, but at the end of the day, it's about executing on the strategy. And if you don't do that, you're just going to fall flat.
Yeah,
so that's a perfect word for me.
Yeah, well, that's where it all starts. So let's go into some of the specifics. First, let's talk about your statewide expansion. You now have 9 newsrooms across South Carolina, including Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, Myrtle Beach, and others. Now, how is it that you're actually growing while many in the industry are retreating? How do you make that work?
Well, Tim, we came out of COVID. I'll be glad when we can stop talking about COVID. But when we came out of that, it was all about audience. That was a time when there was high readership. There was a lot of people wanted information, but that combined with news deserts that were starting to form, we decided to really grow on the audience side. And you mentioned something, I'm in this business because of the content that we produce, and that content, it's king. So we really went out to these individual markets and said, how can we produce really good local content where we saw others starting to retreat and do more regional content? We didn't feel like that was the right approach for those markets. So yeah, today we have 114 journalists throughout the state of South Carolina. And, we will continue to add journalists, which I'm sure we'll get into, but we've added some through just funding as well.
Sure. Now, while talking about funding, how do you make the math work on these statewide expansions that you have?
So our statewide expansions, we had a formula going in. We said, okay, what will work? And we knew we wanted to grow audience revenue. So in almost all of those, we started out with a local editor, and then we had 2 reporters. And then we had an ad director publisher that really just served as that face of the community. And we supported that. Then in Charleston, we supported it with our statewide business coverage, statewide political coverage, and then our team that does investigative and public service journalism. So it really made really nice round teams in each one. But it was important for us to have local people on the ground covering local news. And I think another big part of that is just doing the listening tours within those communities. And it was almost sad in some situations where they had a newspaper that they loved, but that newspaper walked away from the content that they really wanted and that made a difference in their lives.
Yeah, it's pretty fundamental. Local news covering local communities, it really does work, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. They don't want regional news.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In addition to this expansion, you've also raised philanthropic dollars to support your Uncovered project, which is an investigative reporting collaboration with 17 other local news outlets across the state. So if you could talk a little bit about this. As a for-profit news organization, how were you able to raise money for that project and others from philanthropies, and how is that going?
Yeah, so today I'm very proud to say we've raised $8.1 million.
Wow.
And yeah, I know it's a big number since 2021. And you know what? We learned from the best. I loved what they were doing out in Spokane, Rob Curley. And he started talking to me about, hey, we have these funded reporters. And I, of course, zoned right in on that. Tell me more. But working through the community foundations, and what was so interesting is people want public service and investigative journalism. They want you to be successful. They want you to succeed. And so it was really important that we set it up through the community foundation because that's our accountability side. All of our reporting goes through them. But yeah, today we've been able to feed the public service and investigative team. We started multiple labs now, the education lab across South Carolina, which has been great, really trying to help education reporting and coverage so that we can improve the education in South Carolina for kids. We have an arts and culture lab. We have a rising waters lab. And we have a fully grown out plan around building out interns throughout South Carolina. We work with 7 universities and have over 30 interns this semester. So just a lot of that philanthropic support and just really taking South Carolina, putting a big hug around it. And what can we do to really improve reporting, grow that next generation, target those areas that people are passionate about. And if people are passionate, they're going to support those efforts. They want us to succeed.
Yeah, for sure. And PJ, it strikes me that, first of all, congratulations on this, because you're filling a void that existed in local news and at the same time doing public service journalism that has a real value to communities and to the broader state. Is this something that you think other regional news organizations could replicate? What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm really proud of the team and the work we've done here. But the more we socialize it, we've been able to, I think NOLA's doing some really good work. Obviously, Seattle does some great work around labs. I mentioned Rob and Spokane and some of the work that they've done. But we've been able to get on the phone, on a Zoom call and share out what works, what doesn't work. And that's been really rewarding. really rewarding. So I know it's replicable. It takes hard work. We do things different. The day's full, but it's fun, and it's a part of, it's the mission. This is such a mission-driven business that we're in today.
Yeah, absolutely. An important lesson to remember. And what kind of reception did you get in these 17 collaborators? Did they say, "Oh no, here are the big city folks from Charleston kind of coming in to tell us what to do or how to cover things," or what? Or was it actually very collaborative? How did that go?
Yeah, I think, maybe this is a little bit our culture. We're family owned. You mentioned we've been around 223 years plus. So maybe a little bit of it is just culture, but we approached those newspapers and said, this is at a time when everybody's hurting. So it's like, what is a story you could tell if you had the resources to tell it? I mean, we're about, let's help ourselves, let's help our state, let's help our communities. And I think that approach was great. The investigative team here, I'm sure there's ego there somewhere, but ultimately it's the story and being able to help one another out. And it was just really well received, and very proud of the work that was done across the state.
Yeah, you produced some amazing journalism and exposed some corruption that existed in some of those places. So the work's been very impressive. So in addition to that, let's talk about Charleston Porch Talks. It's a community engagement and speaker program that you started. You launched it just a little less than 2 years ago, I think, if that sounds right. And then I believe all the proceeds from those events you plow back into your public service and investigative fund. Is that correct? So this is an opportunity for community engagement to kind of get out there in the community, for them to see you and to be real people, not just people in pixels or on print, and also a chance for them to know they're doing something good by contributing to something that's going back into public service journalism. Talk about that program and the inspiration for it and how it's going.
Yeah. So the inspiration for it was Northwest Passage. Again, just listening to what's going on. We tweaked ours, did a little bit different. But what we loved about that program is we constantly have to feed that top of the funnel. No matter what we're looking at, we always look at the funnel. And the outcomes is, how do we monetize things? So when we looked at Charleston Porch Talks, it's about bringing people in, to listen to these New York Times best-selling authors. They may or may not be a subscriber. And in many cases, maybe they aren't a subscriber, but it's that chance for us to bring something in that they really enjoy and they're passionate about. And then we have the opportunity at those meetings to talk about our journalism preservation, and why and the purpose and what it feeds. And then off of that, we really try to, we'll get leads off of that people will either write a check, or they'll say, I want to learn more about being in the Journalism Preservation Society. And that's just, that's a bigger gift that they give to the Journalism Fund than just a subscription. And I think, a lot of times we just have been guilty of not asking. And so I love it because the opportunity to tell our story and the importance of it, people get it. And so it's been rewarding.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of events like that as a way to build community engagement. And I've heard some people say, well, Franklin, it's a lot of work, they're labor intensive. Maybe, the income that you get really isn't worth all the effort. What do you say to that?
So I agree that they are a lot of work. But I would say at every turn today, and you look at the competition, we need to be all about engagement. So, for me, I look at that engagement as, again, feeding the funnel. I really need you to feel like I'm important in your life as a newspaper. So I need to bring you in, whether it's through, what I love about Charleston Porch Talks is that's a fun event. You're going to get your picture with the author who you've read, on summer beach or whatever. And so this is a fun event, fun way to bring you in to what we do for a living, all the way to the serious forums that we have. So at every turn, we talk about this a lot. We always make money. It may be that we're making, $3,000 or $5,000 on these events, and you think, wow, that's a lot of work. But it's the number of people. Did you engage 600 people? And of that 600 people were, 400 new people that you never touched before. So I think it's absolutely necessary in today's environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see, AI siphoning traffic away from news sites across the country, so that one-to-one relationship is more important than ever. And not to get too nerdy, but when you think about like the customer lifetime value of the folks that you may sign up at a Charleston Porch Talk, who then becomes a subscriber and maybe becomes a subscriber over a lengthy period of time, I mean, you have to, I guess, sort of look at this as a long tail investment.
Yeah, it is. It's the value. It's the relationship that you need to have with that reader, the support. So I think it's invaluable. But I know it's a lot of work, but I think that's a part of our environment today.
Yeah. How often do you do them? Are they monthly, quarterly, every couple months?
For the Charleston Porch Talks, we will do 4 to 6 of those a year. But events, whether forums, things like that, I feel like we do 2 to 3 a month.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot of events, and especially think about across the state, whether we're doing education forums, rising waters forums. We will do one on any of our big projects that we do. We try to do a forum, bring people in, which is great.
Yeah, it's kind of another form of public service journalism by bringing the community in and getting them involved in the important work you're doing. Given all these actions, the Charleston Porch Talks, the collaboration, the statewide expansions that you're doing, how would you assess the current situation at the Post and Courier? Would you say it's financially sustainable? Are you still growing? What's happening there?
So out of all of our expansion markets, as a part of our plan, we wanted all of them to be profitable by year 3. So we definitely, had a plan, put our investment in to make sure that worked. And I've got one market that isn't profitable, but I expect it to be profitable by next year.
Okay.
So, and the beautiful thing, I always say I love a good upward trend line. It's one of my favorite charts because the trend line couldn't be more beautiful with that upward trend line, and that's what we wanted it to be, and we've just put the work and effort in there and good journalism to get there.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, we live in a time when there aren't a lot of upward trend lines in the industry. Are you looking at further expansions now? Are you thinking about adding more newsrooms, or are you kind of where you'd like to be?
Yeah. I honestly think we are where we would like to be. For the most part, I think I would say we're happy. We're in South Carolina. If there were another smaller opportunity within South Carolina that we just felt like there was a news desert that we could step in. The other thing we've done, Tim, is through our internship program. We really target students that live within South Carolina. If we say, if you want to go back home and you want to make a difference, doesn't matter where you are in South Carolina, you can report for us and we can help bring that community and news to that community through our bigger organization. So it's going to be a little different model as we move forward and develop out our internship program.
Yeah, well, it's great experience for the students. You're also building the pipeline of the next generation of journalists, which is really important. So at a journalism school, we fully support internship programs to help local news.
Then you will appreciate this. We actually had one of our donors come to us and had graduated from Wofford, loves public service and investigative journalism, so was willing to fund for 3 years of fellowship on investigative journalism. So that will be a junior-senior program, and we'll be able to at least hit 3 students over the next 3 years to be able to fund that, and I'm excited about it.
That's amazing. Yeah, what a great opportunity. So just to say up front, I'm not asking you to throw shade on other publishers around the country, but how is it that you're growing when so many in the industry are retrenching? What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. For starters, I've had the opportunity in my career to work for publicly held and privately held. I do think our ownership allows that flexibility and the ability to really truly pivot and try new things. And when we say fail fast, I think that's really true here. It's not somebody's pet project. So I think the ownership model has definitely made a difference. And I think the other thing is the leadership team here. We do have a mentality. We don't let grass grow under our feet. And as soon as somebody has a good idea, we really listen and we say, is that something that we should be doing here? So we always have to be innovating. And I think the team here does a good job of keeping their eyes and ears open to that.
Yeah, you do have to always be innovating in as fast as things are changing. And so do you think, and again, just to put you on the spot a little bit, is it a structural ownership issue at other places that prevents this kind of entrepreneurship? You do have the advantage of being in a fast-growing market, which I'm sure is an advantage you have that maybe some don't. But what do you think?
I've always said this, and it's going to get a little harder on people, unfortunately, with AI because, you have to turn the ship. And I know there's companies out there right now, and it's always harder to take legacy and turn. And I think that's been a part of our struggle as an industry. It is what it is, but it's so hard to turn off legacy. It's fed us for so long. But it's finding the right balance of legacy. And then, you've got to put your money into what's the future is. And it's not an easy decision. So I think, it's just easier when you have an ownership structure that's small enough and our board too that says, let's make this happen. We want to be sustainable. We want to get across the line. And we're close to the ground on this one. It's important that we have no other options. We have to sustain. We think journalism is way too important not to take this really, really serious. But it's a shift. And, I remember in, I think, 2008, we were talking about in McClatchy, 2008, 2013, we were talking about sea change. It's a beautiful slide with a big wave. And it's like, to take that serious and really come up with a plan that's going to get you through the other side. It's just a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and those seawaters are still churning, I think, even today. Maybe for those who aren't familiar, you could talk about your owner a little bit, and I saw him quoted on the CBS Sunday morning show, and he was almost joking about how this is not a money-making business. Really, it's not a business to get rich in. I think he might have said, to paraphrase. So, talk about your owner a little bit.
Oh no, and sometimes we refer to Pierre as our secret sauce around here, but Pierre Manigo, he's fantastic. He truly believes in journalism, and we like to say what he is enabling us to do with journalism in South Carolina is just something that we wish was happening more and more. And I do think you have some pockets in some other states of people that understand the importance of it. But he's enabled us to really make these changes and to invest where we needed to invest. At the same time, he has those expectations of, are we making a difference? So I think that the team is really uber focused in on what we need to do. But yeah, he's terrific.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the innovation, whether it's you, whether it's the Minnesota Star Tribune or the Seattle Times, you mentioned before, there are many others. That independent ownership right now seems to be in place in areas where the innovation is happening around the country. Is that what you see?
Well, I think that's really fair. And, to all my friends that work for publicly held companies, at which I have, it's just harder. You have those earnings reports. And it's harder to say, I need to take this, I need to lose money here. Because I really have to invest to make a difference long term. And I think you're just saddled with those short term decisions And that's unfortunate for our business because I think we're going to have some of that longer term investment.
Yeah. There are a lot of talented journalists at those places, and there's a lot of good journalism being produced, but it's just different and can be more challenging. So thank you for pointing that out. So you mentioned AI, and I want to circle back to that. For obvious reasons, there's a lot of interest in AI these days. I've asked almost all the guests on this program so far about how they're using AI and where they see it going in their own news organizations. What say you?
Yeah, so right now we've got we pulled together a cross-divisional team. So we use AI pretty extensive as a tool for efficiencies. Within the newsroom, we will do some first edits. But we tried to position it more as this helpful tool to reporters, so that you can get your first edit, you can feel good about your story, and then you're moving on to make that story even better. Then you're having those deeper discussions with your editor. But for efficiency purposes, business office, system installs, we absolutely are using AI for efficiencies. And I think even from the vendor level, one of the first things we did is we went through and said, okay, here's all the vendors we use across the company. Who's AI friendly? What are they doing to innovate themselves? Because we wanted to make sure that we were partnered with vendors that were innovating. So I think you'll see some changes in the industry just as that innovation. We're seeing some costs come down from vendors, which is fantastic. We need them to find efficiencies so that we see savings. So I think it's, somebody said that AI is, it's one of those things that's going to basically change, like electricity changed how we do things.
Right.
Like this emerging. And so I think we have to absolutely be in the game and understand everything that it can do for us.
And what are some of the back office functions that have been made more efficient by AI?
Yeah, so there's a lot of automations that we do, whether it's through reports. Like today, one of the things for the newsroom that I think is really helpful is we'll feed our Marfield data in, and then you get this executive summary that says, okay, these stories are converting, these aren't, what would you do different? Maybe it's a top of funnel story, but it's just like we can just do that in minutes and have this beautiful report that then you can measure yourself against. And before it's like you pulled data from 28 different end reports, and then you got the dashboard, and maybe you got the dashboard a month later. But so I love the reports that we're getting out of the newsroom. Obviously, all the marketing things that we're doing, it makes a lot of sense. There'll be efficiencies whenever we do system installs. It's just saved so much time on system installs. But
yeah.
Commercial print, I mean, you name it. The commercial print used to be, by hand through the process. Let's write this down. And we just have found ways to automate that stuff and just make some of that back end office stuff so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also helps free up resources for reporters and for the newsroom, right?
Yes.
So we have just a little over a minute left. And I wanted to ask you a more personal question. I watched an interview that you did 5 years ago called We the Women. And in it, you said that you hoped your legacy was to see the Post and Courier through to the other side of that metaphorical transformational tunnel. Do you feel like you've made it?
Wow. Yes, that is a great question. So yes, we've got to get. We have Project 2028. I'll be 62 this year. So yes, I have a goal in mind to make sure that we get everything stable. We have a couple of things that we'll work on. Didn't know AI was going to interrupt us as much as it has, but I think that's just added an exciting element that we'll work through. But got that one market we're going to get to profitability next year, and I will feel like we have arrived with the expansion. But yes, thanks for asking that.
Yeah, sure. Well, and I think if we surveyed the industry, there wouldn't be a lot of folks who would say that they've made it to the other side of the tunnel yet. So congratulations on that journey. So PJ, this went by really quickly. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with us. I'd also like to thank the supporters of the Medill Local News Initiative and this podcast, the MacArthur Knight and Joyce Foundations. You can find a new episode of this podcast every month on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and the Medill Local News Initiative website. In just 6 months, we've built a very solid audience for this podcast. If you're interested in the pod, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. We'd appreciate it. And thank you for being here. Please join us next month when our guest will be Eric Barnes, the CEO of one of the nation's most successful local news digital startups, the Daily Memphian. So we will see you then. And PJ, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me.